Yo, it's Chris, Liege Games. Let's do this. 3 different games, 3 different mechanical approaches, and 3 different thoughts on all of them at this point. Retail, hype train riding it high. WizKids giving us another in the lines of the similar stylings of Lords of Waterdeep, and Satchel Quest, currently on crowdfunding. What do you need to know about all 3 with where they're at currently, and are they right for you? What I like, what I don't like, what I have concerns about, and which one will stand the test of time. Let's frickin' go. First up here, Duel for frickin' Cardia. This is just a 2-player battle line medieval-esque game. I've already covered like 2 or 3 of these this year. We talked about Lone Wolves. We also just recently talked about the Ivy Studios retail version, Pillars of Fate. And now this is another spin-off of that variety of a esque 2-player head-to-head lane battling situation. The difference with this one is you start out with 16 cards in your deck. Now the game offers you a set 1, if you look in the lower right-hand corner of this, or a set 2 to preference off of. But you are also allowed to mix and match once you start understanding. But what you're trying to do in this game is you are trying to win a certain number of lanes just like those other games do. But this is played differently because you are simultaneously playing 2 cards opposite each other, face down, to be flipped face up. And the difference, or the spin-off of this, is a little bit like Lone Wolves in the sense that you want to win the lane. Higher number, 10, beats 1. However, 10 then gets the ring, 5 rings, 5 wins of the columns, means you win. But the loser of that battle gets to activate the power on the card, which may just be a one-time instant ability. It may also be a passive ability. And those are subsequently also marked on the cards themselves in order to keep track of this. And that matters because you'll also be modifying the values of these cards in the first place as well by subsequent later cards. There is a lot of interaction, both head-to-head and both sideways within your own lane. So just because, and this is the other main twist, you lost a column previously, does not mean that you cannot win it. But you will be able to manipulate those cards in many different ways here. Choose a faction, discard your opponent's cards, remove all tokens from any card. This encounters a tie. Oh, previous card that wins the encounter is worth an additional win. Add +3 influence to any one card and -3 to any other card. Or if you just like this last card here, you win. And you win is pretty awesome because there are going to be ways to modify this. And you're going, Chris, well, you're always going to win the lane, but you won't because you'll have cards that will allow you to activate this later on. You'll have cards that will allow you to, as I just mentioned, reduce the value of this from that standpoint. Or this one, -5 for the next card you play. So there are ways to mitigate this. And so you can see the urgency when you're playing these head-to-head of, do I need to win this one? Am I trying to set it up for later? And then try to subsequently predict what your opponent is going to do. And the cool thing is they didn't need to do this, but that you have both of these sets that are different. Activate the ability of one of your losing cards. So the combinations of how you want to do these together for, say, that win card are going to be completely different as you, well, digest which ones are right for you. Choose an opponent's faction. If they don't play that one, discard 2 cards from their hand. Add +5. And so in your previous encounter, your card wins and your opponent loses. So again, these are a step up. If you win the following encounter, you win the game. So these are all just different though, and they're crazy, and they're take that, and they're awesome. And if you want the full Battle Line Medieval experience, you've also got the areas. But unlike Battle Line Medieval, only one of these goes out per round, or per battle, if you will, and it just modifies the rules. At the end of each round, don't draw cards. Whatever you have 1 card or fewer in your hand, immediately draw 4. So again, giving you different dynamics, because otherwise you have a hand that is just constantly refilled when you play one, but you only draw 1. So if you're having to discard cards, if you're having to lose cards in that way, your options are going to be more limited. So there is some head-to-head direct take that and potentiation and dealing with the tactical as well as the strategic along the way. I'll just give you a little aperitif of what this gameplay looks like so you can adjust accordingly. So player 1 puts down their card, player 2 puts down their card. You simultaneously reveal. I'll reveal it like this so you can read both the cards. Oh, I win. Or discard both this card and the opposing card. So no one wins this first trick. Then simultaneously you draw back up, and then both players again choose one card and play them down. So then you have a 14 versus a 6. So immediately the 14 wins, but the 6 power activates. In your next encounter, your opponent plays their card face up before you play their card. So now, then you draw back up, they will take a look at their cards, and they will say, you know what, I'm not going to use one of my big ones this time, but you know what, I'm going to take that, and I'm going to choose a faction, and opponent discards all of their cards if you do beat me in that way. So then the question is, do I want to beat that card and discard if they can name correctly, because they may not name correctly, or do I risk taking advantage of that and trying to get a signet in order to even out the score? Let's see. You know what? I don't have anything in my hand that's going to be good from that, so we're going to just win it and not worry about the ability. That's it, though. That's it. And that's why this game is freaking awesome. It plays smoothly, it plays fast. It reminds me of Mindbug in that way, with the Lone Wolves Battle Line Medieval vibes. Do I like it more than Lone Wolves Pillars of Fate Battle Line Medieval? Okay, Battle Line Medieval is great in the sense that it's a little bit, just getting your sets down and having the rules. Lone Wolves is a little bit more thinky. Pillars of Fate is definitely more strategic, but the face-up, face-down special ability cards are there. This is like my vibe, right? Special abilities every single round, every single card matters. Every single card is going to take an effect or a toll on this. And the fact that you gave me 2 decks to begin with to go alongside of this is freaking awesome. The biggest criticism, after I just said what I liked, the biggest criticism I have of this is looking at this and going, look at these backs. Do these need to be the exact same? Because then you shuffle them together and you're kind of like, oh crap, I gotta differentiate and distinguish the two. They don't need to be that similar in artwork. And again, that's a minor criticism, but it's a lot more head-to-head take that. Because, those other ones, they're more passive. Pillars of Fate is a little more aggressive than, say, Lone Wolves or Battle Line Medieval in terms of the, directly changing what your opponent is doing. But this one is going to have a lot more of that. So if those aren't, direct interaction enough for you, something like this, a la akin to Mindbug in that way, is going to be appealing for you. And truth be told, again, this is going to be a really tough year for 2025 because this is easily going to fall within my top 25 games of the year as well. And it's just how high is it going to rise comparatively to all of the other awesome games that have been out there. And so I give kudos where kudos is due. It's freaking awesome. Now we have this very busy setup here in the form of Satchel Quest, which is currently funding on crowdfunding, and this is the prototype version of this. And so think Quacks meets dungeon delving, if you will, because you're going to start off as one of varied asymmetric adventurers, grab your pre-selected starting tokens, throw them into the bag, and then go delving down the dungeon until you almost always run out of these tokens, with placement allocation being the main feature of a bag building mechanic. Because essentially what you're doing on a turn-by-turn, round-by-round basis is taking the level that you're at, taking a token from the bag, and deciding where on that level that is a place that you can play it on to play it. Red spaces you can't play, gray spaces are optional. And as you fill up the spots, you move down from row to row. If you need to go further, you get the additional dungeon board and you go down even further in that regard. Each round is going to be mitigated a la a little bit of a campaign linked scenario system that not only tells you what you start with here, each hero starts with 5 health, 5 gold, and 2 torches, but it changes as you move on to the second one. At the start of the resolution phase, gain 1 victory point for each floor you reach that has at least 1 monster chip. Third, for example, at the start of the dungeon phase, each hero starts with a dungeon depths board, this one instead of this one, and so on and so forth, with a couple different varied scenarios that are present along with that. And so therein lies the crux of this game. Now, the variability comes from not only when you're drawing the chips, but those boards that I just showed you as well, because each of these boards is double-sided, meaning when you pull them at the beginning of the game, you get to choose which side that looks better to you in terms of delving. Sometimes you'll have weapons at your disposal, sometimes you'll have gems or artifacts, or treasure chests, or even monsters pre-spawned, or health potions, because this ultimately is a kind of press your luck, stay alive situation, but really it's more mitigation, if you will, rather than the Quack's traditional press your luck emphasis, if that makes sense. Because the majority of the time, it's not necessarily can I go further, it's how much am I willing to risk. Because your health does start out and it does take damage every single time you cannot block an attack made by these monsters, and you will get attacked and you will have to defend because it automatically deals you damage unless you have a shield next to it. And this is the ultimate crux of things if you do not or do like this style. There is a lot of luck involved with drawing these tokens. You will grab the thing you need when you need it. I just drew the token for the shield. Yes, awesome. Oh, wait, the shield only blocks left, right, up, and down. So I need to have it in the right place. But now I've blocked the 1 damage from that monster, so all I have to do is kill it. And when I'm choosing my tokens, like I said, anywhere on that row. Artifacts give me additional income, and many that are linked up that are different as well. And so you just gradually keep pulling. But I don't want another monster there, Chris. But I can flip it over and use the other side instead. Additional income in that way. And this needs to have 3 tokens around it. 2 weapons and a health potion, and if it does, then I get the reward. If I have the number of tokens correct for the treasure chest on any of these, then I get the reward and no damage. But if I just have the number right, then I take damage and it hurts. And if you don't, well, you don't. And so therein lies some of the mitigation, is that there is not enough mitigation if you're really looking for this. You will not go through this unscathed whatsoever. And so essentially then you just start filling up all of your rows, you go down as far as you can, you total up what's there at the end in terms of positives, negatives. The gem, for example, for every gold that touches it, it gets an additional gold. And then you utilize all of those resources in terms of victory points, gold resources, as well as other action tokens that can be obtained, like this torch, for example, or the ladder, to then use in the subsequent phase of the buying aspect. And this is a little bit different because you're going to have 3 shops available to you over here and 3 shops available to you in this area as well. These 3 shops are relatively straightforward. Pay the gold cost below the token, get the token. However, you can do 2 things actually, not just buy. The first action is you can actually peek if you so choose, or potentially replace if you'd rather be a little bit more, well, adventurous. Because what you can do is you can look at the other side to see, is this really going to be one that I want? The other caveat is if it's got a gold on it, it actually gets discounted. So it might behoove you to peek a little bit. But you may just have to go for the thing you want, because the little arrow directions at the bottom of these tokens is really what's the make it or break it here. And you can see now on the arrow with this one, the bow and arrow goes diagonal, up, down, left, right, not like the sword, which only goes left and right. So although the sword is going to do 3 damage to monsters, it can only hit things immediately to the left or the right. Well, the bow can hit things on multiple levels in multiple directions. So putting it on a dungeon where it can get multiple foes is a lot more beneficial. But that's also the other aspect of things I didn't mention, is that you're going to run into things like this rubble or other things that are going to get in the way that will not allow you to, well, benefit from that. And so those are the things you're going to have to kind of deal with as this pops up. The other thing about this market here is if I take this token off of there, this token doesn't get replaced this round, so anyone else subsequently buying has to wait until the next round to buy something else from that spot. Now, these stores also allow you to potentially change, gain health, or even gain those tokens that I mentioned. The torches are essentially your reroll, if you will. You take the tile that you just pulled from the bag, set it aside, pull another token, then put that first token back in the bag. So it's a little bit of your quacks turn your potion over, if you will, if you're familiar with that. And then the ladder just allows you to go down a level quicker in that way if you don't want to fill up when you are supposed to. The last element of things that we really have to talk about is, say, my wizard here. My wizard has abilities that will mitigate along the way. And one of the resources you're gaining with those victory points and those golds, especially when you're getting the treasure chests, is the experience. And the experience unlocks your abilities. And so you get one at each level. You start out with the 2 starting abilities here, meaning my magic missile actually does not get stopped by obstacles like it would normally get stopped by if I use my staff power, because I have a couple of those, as you, well, did not see from me pull them from a bag, but I do have several of them in there. And then buying staffs or antiques, the purple ones here, actually cost me 1 less. Now, as you go up at the beginning of the game, you're actually given a plethora of each of these. I think I, in the prototype, have 3 of them. You choose 2 of them, and then when you get to that level, you choose which one of the ones that you want to use. And in case you can't remember all the symbology, they've got this handy dandy little guide here. So for example, this one, enchanting, add +1 to a staff or a coin. And then telekinesis, exchange the position of any 2 chips in the same column. So, I like this one. It allows me a little bit more mitigation, and then so on and so forth with levels 2, 3, and 4. When you gain that experience, you gain more mitigation. Now you go through this whole little scenario of 5 of them, and then you see who is the winner with the most victory points around the outside. The beer around the scoring board here is like the rat tails and quacks. The further you are behind, the more you get rewarded in that way at the end of every round. So that, in a nutshell, is Satchel Quest. What do I like about Satchel Quest? I mean, I freaking love bag pulling, right? I love bag building. I love the, did I get the right one? Yes! Or, crap, I never get the right one. That's more of me playing, right? Because I suck at games. I love playing them, as I always say. I really like the skills. The skills actually are meaningful. You want the skills. Like, experience and skills are not just this sideways, superfluous, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to go with the... No, you got to get it all. You got to get these, because otherwise the mitigation isn't going to be there. You got to heal, because you don't heal, you're going to die. You die, you lose victory points after you take more damage, if that is the case. So each of these mechanics is meaningful, and I really like that as well. What don't I like, or what can I see other people not liking? Well, I mean, it's just freaking randomness. There are times where you're just going to pull, like I said, the wrong chip, and you're not going to have anywhere good to put it. Or you're going to pull, like I did with this shield or a weapon, and it's not going to be able to be put in a position that actually is utilizable to block the thing that you need to block. And that's probably the other big downside, is that there is not many defensive items. And so if you just can't pull the right defensive item at the right time, you're kind of SOL. And I think that's maybe purposeful, of just having not a lot of them to make the tension a little bit higher. But it isn't going to allow you to mitigate that as much as you may like if you're one of those people. The other thing that I can see people not liking, or that I wasn't as big a fan of, is it does get a little bit samey. There's not quite the huge variety of types of chips. And that's both a blessing and a curse, because you know a little bit of what you're getting, but there is not going to be a huge mass variety in the same way with how they do different things in that same sense. And I can see people looking at this and going, okay, well, it's a gold, it's a health potion, it's a weapon, it's a chest. I mean, and there's enough, but it may not be as satisfying if you're looking for just the sheer options of something like a war chest, right? Where, again, there's so many different things you could be pulling out of the bag there that it's going to give you that incredibly tactical feel. And therein lies also the tie-in to the abilities here with, say, the wizard. Some of these are going to be more interesting to you and more mitigatable. I would also make the argument that some of these just seem better to me. Some of these I just look at and I go, okay, this just works out better in my mind. But again, that's because I think it's my play style, not necessarily because there's an unbalanced issue. I can't speak to that with limited plays of not even all of the characters with all of the scenarios. I like the scenarios. I worry at the same time about doing this 5 times. Because 5 times doing this is an awful lot, even though it doesn't seem like it. It could overstay its welcome. But again, you could easily cut this to 3 or 4. So I don't really look at that as a huge downside. You could just say, hey guys, there's 5 of these, but we're only going to play 3 or 4 this time. How's that sound? Okay, great. Awesome. Let's do it. And I don't think you'd lose a whole lot except for the, well, I'm just not going to get the access to the 2s and 3s nearly as much. The other big thing I didn't like is, you know what? The treasure chest, I'm just not always a huge fan of. Because again, they're so hard to get the right combination of, which is fine. But again, that's the difficulty that I mentioned earlier without the, essential as much mitigation as you may want. High risk, high reward, and that's what they're going for, and that's what they got. But it didn't feel as satisfying to me in that way, getting those, or frankly, also not being able to get those, because it just felt like, oh man, And so that was a little bit unsatisfying in the way that Quacks somehow, does satisfy as you're getting closer to the center of that potion and pressing your luck. So it just, again, it's a different dynamic, but it didn't give me the same feels either in that way. So overall, I think it has some great potential, but I think you have to also see, okay, what other variety is going to be with the tokens? What other variety is going to be with the spells? What other variety is going to come with these scenarios? And truth be told, these scenarios do turn a lot of things on their head. So this is a great game changer, but it's also a little bit more extreme even of the Quacks turn you on your head at the beginning of the round situation, not necessarily in a positive way as well, that you need to be aware of. So that is Satchel Quest, the prototype. So overall, Satchel Quest, high potential. However, again, some of the pitfalls I could see with some of the scenarios being too random, too difficult to deal or mitigate the damage, too difficult to get what you want, or the variety or the lack thereof, again, being a very fine balance with double-sided chips in that way. So we'll see when we actually have a final copy in 2026 where this one lands. On this very busy table as well, Builders of Baldur's Gate. Step up and step sideways compared to something like Lords of Waterdeep. What are my thoughts compared to it? Well, we'll get there. But essentially what you're doing on a round-by-round basis is building your tableau in order to construct the physical representations of these buildings with the tiles on the places that are marked with the little cranes in the first place. And then you are using those to combo chain resources in order to build everything else, then to also subsequently defend the city when you have enough of the tokens out there that activate that. If you can, well, if you can't, we'll talk about both of those. Then you're going to be having faction tracks. You're going to be getting influence with worker placements in the form of this little guy here that you're going to be going between each of the areas as well. And then income, income, income. Now, the whole basis of this game, though, is predicated on this little black bag right here. Because at the beginning of the game, and subsequently every time someone builds into one of these spots, and how these are even decided in the first place, is at the beginning of the game, you draw these little number tokens, which correlate to all of the 36 plots around the board. You take, say, 21 right here, for example. I place 21 right there on the green track. I place this one on 21, indicating that that is a spot that can be having a building built on it. And then this is also the trigger when all of these green ones have the ability or have been built on that the attack occurs. Attacks matter because if you do not defend attacks and you have buildings within that area that will subsequently get marked with your own individual player tokens as such, then you potentially lose the ability to control that. Your cube gets removed, and you also lose any bonuses that you might acquire along with it. Because therein lies the other main aspect of this slight area majority style game with the combo-driven nature, is that anytime you build next to anything else, you get the bonus of whatever is in the lower corner. So in all of these buildings, there are different symbols present. You're getting resources, you're getting a card, you're getting a favor, you're getting a resource, you're getting a coin, or next to the HQ, everyone has 2 coins. And then you get victory points for building next to the towers or the gates. So all of these things will give you resources in different ways. And again, how you show which is yours and who's going to get what is you mark them with your cubes as you build them, whether they're gates, towers, or keeps. But all of them have very limited spots, meaning once they are full, no more can be built. There's only so many guard tower spots. There's only so many keep spots. There's only so many gates. And each of them offering a slight variety of changes. And how you defend is also similar. You defend with keeps and guard towers. Keeps do 2 defense, guard towers do 1, gates do 0. Gates give you bonuses that you can use as your worker element to gather more resources, but again, that's a different phase of things. So how does the actual gameplay flow though? On a turn-by-turn basis, you only have 3 options. 1, you're going to have a card in your hand that look like this. These cards will tell you what type of building it is and then how much it costs. And then you will also see that some of them have when built actions. So you're going to be having a hand of these at the beginning of the game and as you draw them up in order to buy to create your tableau. So if you have enough money to do this, you can just go ahead and build one of these buildings, pick up one of these tokens, place it on one of these spots that we just said has one of these, remove it, draw a new little token right here in the form of the 16, and then place and put this one back where the new one is going to go. However, the second action that you're going to be taking is your worker. We'll talk about this in a second because we're going to talk about the third action instead first because we've got the cards in front of us here. The bottom of these cards tells you what you can do during your income phase, which is the third different type of action you can do on your turn. This means that you can spend 1 bag resource to get 2 favor. And so each of these cards on your income phase can be used once. Your income at the beginning of the game is decided by what HQ card you are given randomly. It has a basic side and an advanced side. The advanced side has an asymmetric ability, but it does change your income as well. You only gain 4 gold, so it's a little bit more advanced in addition that way. But the base game, you get 6 gold and 1 bag resource. And you can do 1 bag for drawing a card from the display because there will be assortment of these face up. You can retrieve your worker that I previously mentioned. We'll talk about that in a second. Or you can get a favor. So as I mentioned, all of these cards will have these on the bottom to varying degrees. And so in this case, you'll also see that when built, gain a victory point for each level of the influence you have with one of the 3 guilds. So timing of these is going to matter. Where you can build them sometimes matters, and what they give you at the bottom will widely be different. In this case, 2 for a keep, for example, or 2 victory points. And so that's going to be one of my main boons and curses later at the video to say there are some of these that are fantastic and there are some of these that are just kind of the same, and who gets what sometimes can really be a little bit lopsided if the right things come up at the right times. Now, that last action that I mentioned is your worker here. The worker goes to one of these spots in one of the 9 areas that you can see next to the 9 areas, for example. And there are 2 different levels. There is the free spot, and there is the pay spot for these favors that I've mentioned now of the 3 resources, 3 if I can get the fingers out there, that I've talked about. The free one, anybody goes to, don't have to pay anything. This gets a guild influence, this gets you 4 gold. Draw 2 cards from the top of the building deck, gain other resources, gain other faction points, just all of those slight similar vibes, if you will. And the difference here is that the bottom one costs and it's better, right? Build a building from the display for free, but 3 favors. And 3 favors are hard to get. And so that's why you're going to be doing that. But this worker stays out there. And this is the main twist with the worker and why we have to talk about it separately, is that you don't retrieve your worker. And I really like this mechanic as a whole, but it also can be an Achilles heel, is that at the bottom of that basic card, I mentioned that you have to pay that resource to get your worker back. But if you don't, your worker just stays there. Unless, and this is the cool thing, anyone builds in that area. So anyone builds in green, I get my worker back for free. Somebody else's worker wants to go in green, they displace mine, I get mine back for free. And so timing of where you want to build sometimes and when you want to place them out there can actually be really good in terms of doing that for not having as much resource spending in the first place. The other reason you want to defend these areas, because you're going, Chris, well, what if I don't have any buildings in the area? Well, if you don't defend an area and it gets attacked when all of these get full and nobody decides to care about it, is that all of a sudden this spot for the worker now costs 1 favor extra for both of these. So now instead of 0 and 2, it's 1 and 3. So that's going to hurt everybody. So you're going to want to deal with that. Factions on the side, we'll just briefly talk about them. You gain influence from them for the cards, but also from the placement around with those worker placement spots. And you just go up, and as you gather those faction points, you get rewards that are listed there. The tricky part with this is that I did not mention already is you have secret agenda cards at the beginning of the game. You're given 3 of them. You only get to score them for scoring purposes at the end of the game if you have your faction marker above this line. So as many tokens as you have above that line, you get to score them in that way. None above it, 0. 3 above it, 3. Makes sense? Capiche. The other scoring at the end, apart from what you're getting in between, up here on the board that talks about it just out of sight of camera, 2 points per token of your largest connected groups via the lines, as well as X amount of points for how many of the different 9 areas that you have. Non-linear, so if you have 1 of them, you get 1 point. If you have 8 of them, you get 20. And if you have 9 of them, you get 25. And so you're going to be gathering points in these ways, going until all of the places are put out on the board. You're going to have one last one sitting down here at the bottom of the board at the 5 spot, which does 5 attack. And each time you do an attack, you slide this token up, which subsequently tells you how much you need to defend and have in that area. The last thing I didn't really talk about yet is gates. Gates essentially bridge 2 to 3 of these areas, and they give you victory points when you place them. They also give you a slightly different action for spending a bag of being able to use the free action in the ones that it touches as part of your income phase when you're doing your tableau. So, things I like about this game. I like, as I mentioned, the worker placement of building there and getting it back. I really like that. There are some really clever buildings in here that give you more resources for free. There are some really clever resources that just allow you to get 1 card from the deck without a cost even, which is freaking awesome. There are cards allowing you to perform a special action location or even a building elsewhere. And so there are some really cool cards in terms of taking free actions based on the favors that you have. And so it does some cool manipulation here in this way. The factions actually are a great way to get resources when you don't have a whole lot of other options. And I kind of like the randomization of bag pulling that we were just talking about with Satchel Quest, in the sense that you don't know where it's going to go, and can you risk waiting to go to an area, waiting to build in an area before the next one is pulled, or are you just going to have to deal with what's out there? And I like that. The secret agendas are okay. They're fine. The gates are actually something unique. I think they're highly underutilized in our games, and they're kind of nice. I really also like the way of mitigating, because you'll notice that a lot of these buildings, the not buildings, I mean, actually, the gates, the keeps, and the guard towers, they often will span multiple areas, or they can help defend multiple areas. But the ones that are less desired or less connected, say, than this one or this one, will actually give you victory points if you go there. So again, how you choose to splay it is very nicely balanced in that way. So what I don't like, or what I don't see people liking, is that, again, going back right to these building cards, right? There are only a few of them in here that give you these free resources, because you can find like 1 or so copies of getting a free card from the deck, getting a free favor, getting a free bag resource. And if you get those, or get the keep one, for example, I mean, it becomes a little bit overpowered. And the balance skewing is just not even. So like, if you're going to have a card in there like that, you got to have a couple so that everybody has a chance to get it. Otherwise, getting a free one every single time, especially when you're in the advanced mode and you no longer get that bag income, is really kind of a make it or break it. And that leads me to the other side of things, is these advanced powers. Honestly, these don't all feel the same. There are definitely 3 or so that feel just better than the others. Having a second worker is a huge freaking advantage. That's not something that is going to be easily balanced with a few of these others. The other side of things is that, yeah, you are getting attacked. You are going to have this cooperative element, and it's not usually a big deal, but I can see people not liking it. But ultimately, the other benefit of defending that I did not mention, I completely glazed over, is that if you defend, you get victory points if you're the one who defends the most, but also based on what the attack is in the first place. And resources can be a little bit scarce, but at the same time, there's nothing stopping you from taking your income phase multiple turns in a row. Turns are fast. They're snappy, right? You're building something, you are taking your worker back, or you're doing your income. So it does go a lot faster for this game, even though you are putting 36 of these out. The other downsides that I see in that way is that it doesn't scale as well, right? You can see these X marked tiles. You basically just have to block out a couple of them at the lower player counts, which is fine, but it also doesn't really do as much as it should. There's not really any other scaling in that way. And so that's not a huge plus in my book. And sometimes you just get SOL with these attacks, right? You can literally have it happen near the beginning of the game where one or two of these is going to get overflowed really quickly. And I mean, I guess as long as you don't have anything in there, it's not really going to hurt you, but it's a little bit anticlimactic and there's no controlling for that when you're just randomly pulling these tokens from the bag. So it's okay, but it's also something I can see just kind of being really irritating to people if that happens to you once or twice. Same thing with the buildings deck, right? That's probably actually the hardest resource of all of them in our games, is to sometimes get enough buildings, because sometimes, again, you'll have that engine combo chain situation where you're getting all three of the resources fine, especially during the income phase, but this one is just a little harder to get. And so that's the other style of things, because you'll also see plenty of times where the card that is bought happens right before you, or the card that gets turned up after you just buy one because you need something to put down in order to get into one of those areas, or to get one of those cubes out there in order to get the bonuses or whatever else, is the one that you really could have benefited from, and then the next person buys it and there's nothing you can do to deal with that either. And as a small side criticism too, especially at our 3-player counts even, we are running out of cubes. Like, there's just not enough cubes in the base game as a whole. I actually ran out of cubes in the last game that we played with 3 people. So that was a little surprising, given all those considerations. And again, it's just like one of those little things. The board's a little busy with all of the lines, but it's easily distinguishable. The last thing I like is the building bonuses of getting whatever in the lower left-hand corner, even if it's not your own. So I think that really helps people want to build and want to proliferate more so. Even more so with the scoring being, okay, I need to get all of my things into the areas. But again, I'll say that 2 points per largest group, you need to build a big motherfucking group in order to outweigh being spread throughout the 9. Because again, the 9 is 25 points. My biggest group hasn't really ever been, especially at the 3 or 4 player counts, more than like 3 or 4. So there's really a no-brainer in terms of at least my strategy, which again, I'm a bad gamer, so don't take me for word at this, but like 25 points versus 8. So I'm going to be more interested in spreading them out rather than having them close, although I'm going to lose a little bit of resource that way. And the other thing that I said at the beginning of the video, like, how does this compare to Lords of Waterdeep? I mean, right? It's similar in the sense that you're putting these buildings down. It's a little bit better in the sense that you don't just have complete control over, and you're not going to want to go use other people's buildings like sometimes can happen in Lords of Waterdeep. With this one, right, you're not going to be put off by putting a building down if you need to put the building down in that area and it's really going to benefit you. Giving someone else a minor resource for building next to them isn't really going to phase you whatsoever. And so that's the blessing or curse. There's slightly more interaction of the placement style, but you can see all of the places that are down too with these little buildings. And so I like that marker. You just got to be careful when you're moving them around, replacing them each round, because it's easy to forget to put this back on the board. It's easy to forget to draw one of these. It's easy to forget moving up the attack marker by 1 and then having to count how many of these have actually been attacked and have not been attacked. So is it a good gateway game? Is it a good lighter weight game for people who haven't gotten used to this thing? Absolutely. My kids love it. Let's be very honest about this here at the end of the video. My kids are absolutely loving this style of game. As someone who really hasn't taught them any of the worker placement vibes at all, this was a great way to show them that. And I would probably do this similar to Lords of Waterdeep, or even slightly an edge, because I would also make the argument that Lords of Waterdeep needs the Scoundrels of Skullport expansion. Would I like a little expansion to give a little bit more variety for the buildings, a little bit more variety on the map, a little bit more faction differences? Because, I mean, there's slight differences on the factions' rewards, but ultimately they're nah. It's fine. So we're going to keep it for now. But if it falls out of favor with my kids, I could also see myself trading it too, but we'll see. So there you go. They sent it. I'm talking about it. Have a great freaking fantastic day. Peace out. See you around.